Hey folks, Sebastian from Madrigal here. Let's talk a little bit about game UI. So what is game UI? Well, it's the user interface of your game. So an example of that might be a main menu like this. This is a mockup for my game, Project Slide, that I made in Affinity Designer. And this is just to sort of give me a better idea of what my main menu might look like. But of course, game UI is much more than just menus. You have essentially the whole user interface. You have loading screens, you have heads-up displays. Depending on your game, the UI might be very minimalistic or quite complex. And game UI tends to be, in my experience, part of game development that quite few people actually like doing. It may not be as flashy or intriguing as working on like the physics engine or the renderer or the core mechanics of the game, but it can be a very, very important part of the development, and it's actually not as easy as many people make it out to be. Now, if you're using one of the big engines like Unity or Unreal, those already have quite good UI tools built into them, and it might be a good idea to just use those. But if you're not using one of those engines, you have to somehow figure out how to make your game UI. And there are third-party options available to you. Some of them are very, very complex. Some of them might be completely overkill depending on the game you're making. So it depends on your game what kind of system you need or indeed want for your game UI. So for Project Slide, I've developed my own UI system. In the past, I've integrated and tried out actually a couple of the ready-made solutions, but I actually ended up just making my own because I want my UI to be pretty simple, all things considered, and I kind of wanted to see what it would be like to actually make a UI system myself. So enough chit chat. Let's look at what we have. You have probably seen this horrendous looking menu if you watched my videos previously. So this is just sort of a deliberately ugly looking set of buttons, and you can of course click these and things will happen. And that was the kind of the starting point. The new version of what that looks like is this. And as you can see, it has changed a little bit from the mockup already. I made this background have like angles, and these are sort of aligned with the background as well. And I have this temporary logo here as well. So this UI is made with a UI system that I call Goofy, which was made specifically for Project Slide. Let's have a quick look at my outline, my plan for the system. So this is Checklist. This is an outliner that I use to plan almost everything and sort of spec out. And Goofy is not actually all that new. I've started working on it probably around a year ago or so, but it has only been able to produce these really, really hideous looking menus until fairly recently. And so this is essentially the things that I listed when I started working on the project. So what do we want from a decent modern UI system? Well, first of all, we want it to be resolution independent. So what does that mean? Well, if we look at this thing here, we want all of these graphics that we're seeing on the screen to be very crisp and sharp, and not suffer from some weird scaling or anything like that. So essentially, if we take a look at the logo and we scale it up like this, you can see that even though I scaled it up quite a lot, it's actually still very, very crisp, and you can scale it up even more. And all of these round edges, they stay very sharp and crisp, and there's never any question of like, can I scale this image up or down? Will it still work and look good? So that's the first point. That's a resolution independent nature. We want it to be usable with keyboard, mouse, and gamepad, and indeed we can click these things. This option button, for example, is currently disabled, so I can just click it without fear of going anywhere. We can also navigate it with the keyboard and the gamepad, and I can just exit out by pressing enter like this. So we have that covered. Transition and animation support, yes, we do have. Essentially, we have animation support, and that can be used to drive transitions. I'll get back to this in a little bit later. So fast turnaround time when setting up, and I've made a note here that like we don't want to have a system where we need to restart the game, and especially we don't want to have to recompile the game when we move a button, for example. And so if we open up the game again, we have this main menu here. This is actually driven by a script. The script looks like this. Let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. So as you can see, I've tried out some things here. But the main idea the main takeaway from this is that this is it's just one function. We essentially create widgets that we want to put into the view. So we have a canvas, and it's called this. We can then get a handle to this in the code and do things with it. A canvas is essentially like a blank slate that actually allows us to render to it. We have an image box. This is actually what I played around with earlier when I scaled this up. So you can just do this. You can save the script, and it gets compiled, and you can see the change immediately in the view. And same thing here. If you just do like something like this, for example, the new game button just jumps around immediately. And this makes it easier to sort of lay out create your layouts essentially by just changing the script and seeing the result immediately on the screen. Like a visual designer or something like that would be even nicer, but I don't have that currently, but I can actually design these elements visually, which I'll get to in a bit. Another thing to note here is that we don't use like pixel coordinates here, and this ties back into the whole pixel independence thing. So if we want to place something directly in the middle of the screen, for example, you would use 0.5 in both directions, and we can just make this kind of small. And now the logo jumps to the absolute center of the screen. So we use normalized coordinates. This is 0 up here, and this is 1 down here, and all the coordinates go from 0 to 1 when you're laying out your layouts. And that means that if I resize the window, the project slide text still stays in the middle of the screen. So let's actually undo that. And we'll get it back. And this also means that if we make a mistake here, if we just put an S there and we save this game, the game doesn't actually crash. It just says that, hey, we had a problem compiling the script now. Have a look in the output, and here we can actually get the actual error. Like there's no VSU, and now that we've fixed the error, it goes away and we can resume our editing. So what's the next goal that we had? Localization support. Yes, we do have that, and we've had it for a while now. I don't actually know French, so these are just missing, but I do actually know Swedish. So here you have the UI in Swedish, and you can change the language on the fly. It updates the whole thing. So that's nice. Skinnable if you don't know what this means, this essentially means that you can create so-called skins for things. Like you can create like a sci-fi skin, for example. Project Slide is a sci-fi game, and then if you use that skin, then all the buttons will look sort of sci-fi and fit into the whole visual language. And then if you make like a game set in a fantasy universe, you might want the buttons to look completely different. And just by telling the system that we want to use a certain skin, it makes all the buttons fit right in. We don't actually have skins currently, but instead we have something called widget subclasses. So here, for example, we have the button for start new game, and it actually has a subclass main menu button. Actually, if we take this out, you'll see what I mean, because now this reverts to this horrible default button that is sort of, well, I should make this less horrible, but currently this is the base button in Goofy, in the Goofy GUI system, and it's kind of horrible, just so that you should notice it and actually replace it with whatever you actually want. But as you can see, the system still works the same way if we use this. Still, sort of the navigation works and everything. And subclasses are actually, in a way, they're more they are more flexible than a skin system, because you can actually just put not just visuals but logic as well into a subclass. So it's not perhaps as easy to use as a skin, but it's pretty nice. And finally, right to left support. This I don't actually have. I've listed it here as something that we do want at some point if I localize the game into a language and a locale where they use a right to left system. I don't have this yet, but it would be pretty nice to have. So these are essentially what I consider, or at least a year ago when I wrote this, I considered requirements for the system. And actually, we have gotten almost everything done, so it's pretty nice. So let me just show you quickly what going into the game looks currently with the new system. So we just click a button here. We have a new loading screen. This is actually an animation. So we have this this new loading screen animation working. We can skip this cutscene, and here if we go to the pause menu, this still uses the old one, the horribly ugly one. So I think as part of this video we'll actually go ahead and replace this with something that looks more like the new main menu screen. And again we go through an animated loading screen and back to the main menu. So how does this work? In particular, how do we achieve the resolution independence? The answer is that almost everything rendered using the Goofy system is vector graphics. So if we go back to our mockup here, we have this image here, and this is, of course, this is the same image that I use as the background for the menu here. I'm kind of planning to replace this with something that is moving, like a video or just a set of images or something. Currently it's just a placeholder there, and you can even see my scale mannequins and everything. So it's very placeholdery. Everything is very placeholdery still. But everything except this background is made up of vectors, and vectors, as you probably know, are completely scalable. And this is how we achieve the thing with the logo, that we can just make any size essentially, and it stays very crisp like this. And so here in Affinity Designer, this is where I design most of the elements So for example, we have the button highlights here. We can look at what is actually exported as a vector graphic. We have the main menu button highlight and the main menu button background. And these are vector graphics, and they're exported as SVG files. I think that stands for scalable vector graphics or something like that. And if we look at the highlight, for example, we can just open it up in Chrome, for example. Here you can see that the browser renders it perfectly fine. You can actually view the source. So here we have the vector data. There's an SVG file, and you can see the paths. You see all the coordinates that it uses, and we have a linear gradient, things like this. And so this is what the Goofy system actually interprets and renders to the screen using just a normal renderer, essentially. And yeah, here we have another one. Then we have the animations. So the animations I currently use Moho for. So this is Moho animation. This is an animation tool that can be used to animate vector graphics, among other things. And actually what I do then is that I export this as a series of SVG files. So it can take a little bit of memory. There's no sort of like smart compression or anything like that, but you can animate these vector images, and you get sort of super crisp animated versions of everything. So that's pretty nice. And then the final piece is essentially how do we read that data? How do we read the SVG data and turn it into something visible on the screen? And for that I actually use two third-party libraries. So this is not completely self-made. First of all, I use Nano Svg. If I can convince my browser to get onto this screen, thank you very much. So this is Nano Svg. It says here the project is not actively maintained, but there have been some pull requests quite recently. The nice thing about this is that it's very, very small. Apparently it's modeled after the HTML5 canvas API, which I don't know at all, but I feel like this API is very easy to use. So this is essentially like an immediate mode vector drawing API. And I've written a backend for this for my own engine, so it fits right into the main renderer, and you can render things like this, for example. And the same guy has actually also made another project called Nano Svg. So this is essentially just a parser of SVG files. Rather than having to parse the XML yourself, you can just use this. And they fit together pretty nicely. You have to do a little bit of massaging of the data that Nano Svg spits out before you plug it into Nano Svg, but they fit together quite well. And this gives you almost like a complete SVG renderer for your UI system. So on top of that, I have built essentially all the other pieces. So I have the system where you can create a script like this, and you have these canvases, image, buttons, boxes, etc. And they go into sort of views and use this normalized coordinate system. So before you get super excited about using these libraries and tools yourself, you need to be aware of the limitations of doing it like this. Not all effects that you export, for example, from Affinity Designer are directly usable. Like, for example, some of the things that if you add like a glow here, for example, it will get exported as a part of the SVG file, and it's possible that the browser can render it correctly. But Nano Svg, for example, it doesn't know what to do with any kind of raster data that's embedded into the vector data. So you have to sort of consider carefully, like, okay, what kind of UI can I make with just vectors? And that's why these are sort of mostly kind of single colored. They might use like a gradient like this, but if you want something with like very, very detailed sort of patterns, like if you want every button to look like a rock wall or something, and you want that rock wall pattern to come from a texture, then this solution might not be the best solution for you. We can still make some kind of interesting and complex things. Like, let's see here, we have for example, where did I put my main menu script? I have a Madrigal logo here, which is animated, for example. And if we make this, let's make it unstretched with width 1 and put it in the middle of the screen. I think this should work. Right, so now we have, we still have the menu here, which looks a little silly, but we now have a full screen animation of the Madrigal logo, and this is all done using vector graphics. So you can make things like this work. If you make it a little smaller, you can actually see what's going on. So you can see that we have this fade here, which is just like almost like a sheet that is moved in front of the logo like this. So depending on what you want, certain things can be really tricky to represent with vector graphics, but most things can be done quite nicely. And again, this is completely scalable. It stays pixel perfect. We can make it very small. It still looks really good and pixel perfect. And there's a little bit of jaggies going on there, but for the majority of things, it looks really good, and you never have to really care about the resolution at which you're rendering it, because it doesn't care. And Nano Svg comes with a pretty nice anti-aliasing solution built right in, so you get these very nice and smooth edges to everything. And here, if you want to see what the Madrigal logo animation looks like, we have it here in the in Moho. So right, we don't actually see the transparency correctly if we're rendering it, yeah. But as you can see, it's literally just the vector data, and we have some like radial gradients here and things like this. And of course, the interesting thing with this as well is that you can open even the animations. You can open them in a browser. So if we look at animations and we go to Madrigal logo, the first one, a few frames should be almost completely black, and then at some point you start seeing the text appear. Here we go. It's even sort of, it appears out of thin air, and then you have the whole thing, and you can inspect every frame to see what's going on. We should soon start seeing the here you can see the darkness is sort of approaching from this side here. So this is kind of interesting, and you can of course even go into this and look at all the coordinates in here. So I have a small converter that takes one of these sets of frames and produces a binary file for the animation. So the full animation for this in the format that the game can run is 2.5 megabytes. So it's not super small, but it's not super super big either. Like if we export this as a video, we can probably see that it's going to be much smaller. Let's let it render and see what we end up with. And here we go. We can immediately see that the colors aren't quite there because, well, maybe I could have upped the video quality a little bit, but you don't have to deal with these things when you're actually when you're using vector graphics, so that's quite nice. Oh, it actually ended up a little bit larger than the vector graphics. So in this case, it actually it was a net win for us to use the vector graphics, but yeah, these are things to sort of keep in mind, that it may not actually always be a net win, and depending on all the, like, the frame's size is directly related to how complicated the geometry on the frame is. All right, I was thinking that we could perhaps improve the pause screen in this video. So we have this horrible looking thing, and I want to make it look closer to this. So let's do that next. Before we do that though, let's have just one more quick look to see what the screen has actually eaten, what goes into making this screen. So what do we have? We have this this background image. This is not something that we'll want to actually have in the pause menu. We just want to see the actual game, the paused game behind it. Something that is perhaps quite difficult to see here is that this image here has been toned down. It has been darkened quite a bit. Otherwise, it doesn't really look good as a background. And I think we'll actually want to do the same in the pause menu. We'll want to darken the background. And then we have this slightly skewed rectangle essentially here. Now this could be done with just a rectangle widget like this. If we wanted it to be just a straight rectangle, we can actually see it, boom, it appears like this. And the same thing can be done for like a skewed rectangle. This is actually like a polygon now, but I haven't created that widget yet, which just allows you to input arbitrary points. So I think we'll probably render it from code, just like we did previously. So the secret to how it works currently in the main menu is that we have this canvas here, which is called main menu background canvas. And if you want something to actually be referable from code, you have to give it a name, so that you can then from the code you can go like, hey, give me the thing with the name main menu background canvas. And then in this case we have a custom rendering handler, like a function that gets called, because like this thing doesn't really tell the system what it should actually do. It just tells it that, okay, we have a canvas and it has a name and it's centered in the screen and it fills the whole screen. Right. So if we take this away, the background goes away, but we don't actually tell it how to draw it here. So this is actually rendered from code. My goal would be that we wouldn't really have to do that, but I want to have the option there because you can create some like really complex things with really complex behavior, like HUD elements, for example. So it's very important to have the canvas functionality there, and this is one instance where it's used. I think we'll do the same thing for the pause menu. Then we have an image box, which says project slide. We'll probably want to have like a text here that says posts or something like that, and that we can do with a label. So here we have a label, and we actually probably already have a label in the pause menu. And the only remaining thing then are the buttons, and here we have some floats here. Actually, I can remove that thing. Whoa, what am I doing? So we have a start X and a start Y, and we have some horizontal and vertical differences here. Like if I change these, for example, you can see the buttons sort of how they kind of align themselves. And in between every button, we just add that diff to the X and the Y, and then we can use them like this. And this way we get this sort of this row here. And then what actually happens with the buttons? Well, we give it a name as well. We don't probably actually need the name here for anything, but I've done it anyway. We give the subclass, and this is the thing where we actually we get sort of the visual look from the subclass. Size is pretty self-explanatory, and position as well. And the font is just the standard font. You can register a font and then give it like an easy to remember name. Localized text this is how we actually get the new game text there, and it's also the way that if we switch to Swedish, we get Nytt spel instead, and this is just an identifier for the localized text, which means that it actually can translate it on the fly. This action is perhaps the most important thing with the whole button. So rather than having it so that when you click this button, you hook up like a callback or something to it. Instead, you tell the system that when this button is clicked, we fire an action called main menu start new game. And that way you can then later have, for example, if you want multiple buttons to do the same thing, or you want to temporarily remove this button, it doesn't really break the logic, because the actual callback, the code that is executed when the button is pressed, it's actually registered with this action instead. So you can just remove this button here. You can comment it out. Oh, that doesn't work, but we can do it like this. And nothing breaks, because there's nothing actually referring to this button. So it's just a level of indirection, which I think is very handy. And so each of these buttons have an action associated with them. Then we have the focus shifting is if we go down here, if we press down on the arrow key, we should go to load game. So that's actually why we need the names. Yeah, that's right. On focus down, it just goes to that one. And if this thing was actually invisible, it will go down to multiplayer. We will use its on down thing. And if you go up, it goes to the exit button, which kind of makes sense, because like if you're doing this and then you go up, it should just loop. So this is how the focus is currently handled. You can use all kinds of fancy auto layout algorithms and whatnot to automate this stuff. I haven't done that. I'm doing it like stupidly like this. So let's have a look at what the pause menu script looks like. So this should be a little simpler. So we have a label, text UI paused. Actually, we can just go into the game again and see what's what. So this is the label. We have a button, resume, load, and exit. So resume, load, and exit. And we have a rectangle, and it has a fill color and a border color. And this is again this is like a vector thing, so you can just adjust it on the fly, and it updates. So we'll probably want to get rid of that and instead have the background there. But yeah, we should have almost everything everything that we need. And again, this has the focuses and it has the actions, so it works pretty much the same thing. Okay. So what does this look like on the code side? I mentioned that we have the code actually rendering the background and that polygon for the main menu. So this is actually something that we want to almost copy paste to the pause screen. We don't want the background image, but we do want the panel behind the main items. So this is how you issue Nano Svg drawing commands. As usual, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna enlarge this text because it just makes it much more difficult for me to actually do the work. But I hope that you can see it. To actually draw onto the screen, we need to go from the normalized coordinate systems to pixel coordinate systems. So again, this is like 0, 0, and this is 1, 1, regardless of the resolution. And Nano Svg actually wants us to give it pixel coordinates. So we have to, for each point, this has 4 points. So it's essentially like this point here, this point here, this point here, and this point here. And we ask the context, get us the pixel position from the UI position. The UI position is the normalized screen coordinates. And then we do a move to, and then a line to, and then we fill it. And that's how we get the nice polygon rendered. And of course we use a black color with just a little bit of opacity, and that gives us this see-through polygon thing here. So we'll want to do something similar to this. And so how does this work? Well, here, this is what I mentioned, but we actually need a name for the canvas. So if we go here, we go to main menu, we have the canvas, main menu, background canvas, and it's the same thing as here. So it tells us that, okay, get the widget with that name, and we know that it's a canvas, so we can just cast it to a canvas, and then we can set a render callback to this function. And Bob's your uncle. That's how you can render things. So this is a very very nice system in my opinion, because like you get the power of doing this, and actually nothing prevents you from even staying inside. You get the pixel position and the pixel size for the widget, and of course you get those from the position and size, but nothing prevents you from just rendering anywhere on the screen. So you can do some really crazy things with this. It's quite powerful. But at the same time, if you just want to do some like very sort of pedestrian things like showing an image or creating a button, you can just do those things directly from the script. And things just work. Like you can just create a new, here we have a label, for example. Hello there. And just put it in the middle of the screen, and you can create new things on the fly. And that's kind of nice. So even though we have to make currently some things from code, it doesn't really matter, because things we have to do from code tend to be these very kind of custom things. So this menu UI view model, this is pretty simple. It only has one UI view. If we go to the in-game UI view model, it's much more complicated. We actually have several views. We have the pause menu view, which of course we're interested in now. We also have the HUD view, the game over menu view, and the outpost menu view. So this is a bit more complicated in this sense, but it shouldn't be that bad. So let us actually copy paste this. Let's see, we have a view created here. We have a view created here as well. We don't. So there's one important thing to remember here. This is kind of like an implementation detail. So I'm sorry, I'm exposing you to things that you may not be super interested in. But since the view can get recreated, because we might make changes to the script, we have this view created. callback here, and we set it to recreation callback. And this is the place where we actually need to hook up the widget and set the render callback. So that if we make changes to the script later, we still want our render callback to be hooked up every time we recreate the thing. Actually, let me just all about that, and then the in-game view model, and we can just put these side by side, and let's actually just go full screen and make it a bit easier, like so. All right. And that's loading UI view model. That's not what I want. I want the in-game UI view model. Oh, it is actually. Oh, right. It is actually created here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, my bad. So, yeah, we have a view created here on the menu UI view model and in the in-game UI view model also. So what we want to do is actually just, we'll take this and we'll call this render pause menu background canvas. And we'll want to get actually a pointer to that. Or do we though? Do we actually need it? Do we need this for anything? I don't think we actually do. We don't need it for anything, no. So I'm actually just gonna delete this completely. And we can just do this, and we can do this. So we want to get it, and then we assert that we actually did get it, so that we haven't typoed any names or anything like that. Yes. Okay. This is good. And then we go here to this one. And of course we need to check for the success, because like if the script fails to build, the success will be false, and in that case we don't want to do anything. But I still have it here so that you can sort of de-initialize something in case you have some really complex, crazy stuff going on. And it's the pause menu view. So pause menu view, and let's call this thing not the main menu background canvas, no, but the pause menu background canvas, like so. And this would be the in-game view model and render pause menu background canvas, right, like this. And we can just create this right below. Okay, so currently this will fail because this assert will fail because we don't actually have that yet. But let's create it soon. But before we do that, I'm just gonna copy paste this, because we want the pause menu to look almost exactly the same as the main menu. We just don't want the background image. I took that out and left this in. And again, we can probably create a widget for like a polygon like this later if we want to. Okay, that should actually be everything we need. I don't think we need anything more on the code side, but we still need to create the canvas in the pause menu. So let's do that. So it was awesome. Oh, what? I forgot one of those in there. The label can stay, but let's actually take this rectangle away. Or rather, let's disable it for now, and we'll want the rectangle just a little bit. So let's see what happens. I'm just gonna load it into the game like this. And hey, it's kind of working. Like we get the polygon correctly rendered here. These are obviously not correctly positioned. We're not running the campaign now because we just loaded straight into a level, so it leaves it leaves out the load game button. There's no loading unless you're actually playing the campaign. So the focus just switches between these two exactly as it should. However, it should not leave this this hole here. So let's try to do something about that. And then this paused text should probably be somewhere over there and you know, fit that a bit better. But now we can start, even though this looks like ass, we can just start to flesh this out. So see, like, whoa, now we have that. Oh, yeah, okay. The load menu button actually needs to be. Like you can see these guys coming in here, and this is now suddenly not visible anymore. And that is because the loading of this button is probably handled through code. It should be handled through something like called a property, which would have handled this this thing nicely. A more interesting question though is why our canvas went away. So that's kind of interesting. That should not have happened. Let's see what's going on. Right, so now it looks sort of correct, or at least how we expect it to look. But if we now change something here, what should we change? Like make this significantly larger. Yeah, this thing goes away. That's not supposed to happen. I wonder why that happens. Oh, I know why that happens, or I might know why that happens. Yeah, so this is not good. Like I mentioned previously, we have multiple views here, and I didn't realize that I actually put this into the HUD view creation. But we need one for the pause view as well, because this is obviously not going to run if we have it in the wrong one, and then we make changes to the right one, so to speak. So take those away. Pause view created, yes, and then we can go up here. We can call it first of all. But before we do that, we just do pause, menu view, and then this thing. There we go. So now we should be able to make changes and still have our background showing up properly. So this might be a little difficult perhaps to understand. I'm going through this pretty quickly, but the reason is that we need this thing to happen every time we make a change to the script, and previously we didn't. We just did it once when the HUD view was created. We needed to do it every time the pause view is created. We need to hook up this render callback, because all of these widgets get recreated, so the callback gets lost. That is sort of the thing. So now if we make that larger, like we still have this background here, and again that load button appears, which is not great, but that's I know the reason for that, and we will have to fix it. We have to fix it quite simply. So I don't know how like large this is supposed to be, and it's probably not supposed to be quite that white. Yeah, maybe it can be something like no, grayish. Come on. Yeah, that doesn't look good at all. Like I should probably actually I should render that with like a slight slight gradient like this, and I also have a drop shadow behind this guy. So this is just created in Affinity Designer and rendered as a text. But it would actually be kind of nice to not have to do that, because it's rendered as an image. It would be nice to be able to use this as a text, because of course this now works with the localization. So luckily we can actually render drop shadows for the text, but I do wonder if we can actually do it for the label widgets. Like the renderer supports drop shadows for text. We'll see. Let's copy paste this button layout stuff as well. Button pivot, yeah. And we'll want this in between on the buttons. And I want that as the actual. Actually, we probably want both the size and the position. I think those can kind of work quite nicely with the pause menu as well. Like we get them sort of aligned with this background here. So so this looks all right. Let's get the pause text still a bit to the left, still a bit more. Usually I would do this on two separate screens, so that's why I'm sort of, this is not as quick as it would otherwise be. But no, not that one, not that one. Something like that maybe. And let's make it a little brighter still. I'll figure out a way to make this look nicer. But yeah, this is sort of pretty nice. All right, sorry about that. There's gonna be a slight cut there in the video. I managed to somehow stop my recording suddenly. So anyway, I'm back, and what I want to do at this point is still make it so that when you're actually like resuming and pausing the game, actually when you're pausing the game, the background is supposed to be dimmed a little bit. And so I did this already actually, but it's a very simple thing to do. So we can just redo it here. We create a rectangle, and we do it before the label. So it sort of goes in between this polygon here and the label. You can set the Z order explicitly if you want to, but another way is to just create them in the order that you want them sort of to be on top of each other. So we have a rectangle with a black color, a little bit of opacity. It fills the screen and it's centered in the middle of the screen. So now when we pause and unpause, you can see that the background is sort of gets dimmed a little bit, and we can make the effect more extreme if you want to, like this. But of course, it sort of accumulates with this polygon here, so you want to be kind of conservative with that amount. But yeah, I think this is pretty much what I wanted to accomplish with the pause screen. It doesn't look that nice yet, but it sort of gets the point across, and it looks definitely better than the really horrible one that we had. I'm gonna have to work at least on this text here a little bit. It doesn't look quite good yet, but it will do. And of course, we have all kinds of things here in the game still, like this work in progress text, which obviously is not going to stay in the game. It's also rendered using the Goofy system. This mission screen here shows the active objective. is rendered using the Goofy system. This unlocalized text here just shows that this is actually just a text that comes directly from the database. It's not localized. The mission itself is not localized yet. And when we drive here, we actually see that we get this kind of target marker that sort of shows you the objective where you're supposed to go, and that's also rendered using Goofy, even though it's just a red cross right now. But you can do all kinds of things like this with the system, and it's quite nice. It's quite nice. And of course, if we use our railgun, you get this very placeholdery sort of ammo or weapon gauge there on the left side, which fills up, and then you can shoot barrels with it if you want to. But yes, so this is essentially the Goofy GUI system in a nutshell. I think I'm gonna end the video here because this is essentially what I wanted to do in this part. Maybe we'll revisit this and make some more menus or some HUD things or something in the future in another video. But I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much. If you stayed with me this far, please let me know if you have any questions or comments or anything regarding this, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.